So welcome to the ConOps Office Hours that is part of the CICS workshop organized by ResearchSoc and CICOE pilot. I'm Rafael Ferreira da Silva. I'm at a USC Information Science Institute. I'm a research assistant professor in computer science. And I'll be talking a little bit about ConOps today. So for those who doesn't have any idea about what is a ConOps is a concept of operation document that is basically the first document you should create when you are working on your projects, in particular large projects like for the large facilities funded by NSF. If it's a smaller project, it's okay that you don't have this kind of documents. You might create just a large design document with all the information that you're gonna do and all the specificities of your projects, what you're gonna implement, what are the resources available. But when you go for a larger project, you need a more like a structured organizations, and you wanna try to separate what is a high-level design for a low-level design. And a ConOps document comes in hand on that because it's a high-level design document that is going to provide all the, say, information for the stakeholders that they can come and understand what your project is about, what you're trying to do, what you're not trying to do, and all the information should be clear there. So as a sum of the resources here, the first one is a link to the cicoepilot.org website, where you can have some materials. There is a video there that it talks about an overview of the ConOps document that I presented about a few months ago. So there are these standards. The IEEE standards is the most popular one, released in '98, and most of the ConOps documents today it's based on this standard. The NCAIA from '92 was a good start point, but it's a little bit outdated now. But it has basically the IEEE standard is based on this one. And there are a few other ones, so Department of Transport, Department of Defense, that provide their own, but it's really tied to defense-related projects or transport projects. So I would say for a CI context, I wouldn't go for one of these ConOps, but it's a good reference to know what should be or what should not be in a ConOps document. And last, the link here is the MITRE best practice for ConOps. So if you just type at Google MITRE best practices, they have a very good website explains what are the good things to have in a ConOps and what are not the good ones. So if you go to the first link on the video, there are, I talk on details on all of these documents. Here, I'm just gonna try to go and do an overview of the ConOps document. So basically, when you're looking for a ConOps document, there are some objectives you want to achieve. So the first thing you want to try to do is provide end-to-end traceability between all the operational needs and the source requirements. So what this means here is someone reading this document needs to understand exactly everything that your system is going to do and what are the requirements to have this system perfectly behaving. Another thing is to establish a high-level basis for these requirements, also high-level basis for test and planning, and the operational analysis model. So basically here, what you're looking for into a ConOps document, it's all the information that you say, what are your use cases, how you're going to address them, what are the requirements for these use cases, and how this is going to be implemented at a high-level perspective. And also you need to provide some validate and some requirements. So when you are developing a ConOps document, the first step you need to do is remind yourself that this is a living document and a unique document that requires inputs for all stakeholders. So on your ConOps document, you need to have a few of the different perspectives that you're going to show and be clear on who are the stakeholders reading that. For example, is the funding agents addressed on this ConOps? So you need to put into a language that they can understand, but also are the developers concerned for this ConOps? If so, you also need to use a language that they're going to understand. And there are other stakeholders, like there is the user that will be reading this ConOps. So if you go too specific into the implementation, it might get lost. So the user won't understand exactly what your system is trying to do. But at the same time, if you go too high level, you might not capture some of the details that the developers need to understand how some of the use cases need to work. So it's a fine line that it's hard to figure out initially, but that's why we also mentioned that this is a living document, and this is the key word here. You cannot only develop a ConOps in the beginning of your project and forget about it. You need to be constantly updating and having a new version of it that is consistent with what you've been developing. So basically, you're trying to answer these 6 questions when you're doing your ConOps document. That is, who, what, why, where, when, and how. So basically, who are the stakeholders? What are the elements and the high-level capabilities of the system? Why does your organization lack that system? So why are you trying to do that? Why is it important? Where is the system located? So geographically and physically. When each activity will be performed, so think about like a time sequence diagram and a timeline when you see you might have different steps happening at different points of your system. And how will the system be designed and built? So what kind of resources you're going to use? You can use cloud resources. Use your own cluster. You're going to use different infrastructures. So here is just a suggestion of a structure from a ConOps document at a high level. You would have a cover page, records of reviews and changes. So as I said before, since this is a living document, it's very important to keep track of what kind of changes happen. The table of contents, the document contents, I go more in details in the next slides. Some notes, references if you have, appendices, and here it's where you put all the detailed information that might not be relevant to all stakeholders, but to some of them. The glossary that helps the users to understand terms that are in your own system, in your ConOps document, and some acronyms that you might have related. There could be some jargons to help the user. So into the details of the document contents part, that is the main part of your ConOps document. I would suggest to separate and have at least a few of these sections. So basically an executive summary, 2-3 pages summarizing exactly what are the main goals of your ConOps and who are the stakeholders. Actually it's not missing, it's mission and capabilities. So what are the missions of your systems, what are the main capabilities at a high level description. So the idea of these 2 first sections is really to provide an overview of everything at your system. And if someone wants to go into more details, they can go into the other sections. So the operational organizational is basically the structure of your project or your organization. And then the current systems, the current situation or system. Here you're going to describe what you currently have, if it's applicable. If it's something completely new, you're a developer from scratch, so you don't need this section. But if you're updating some system or make some improvements, it's a good place to explain what is already there, and also create a section explain what are the justifications for the new system that you're gonna develop. So why do you need the new system? And then you come with the proposed system section. There is the actual system that you're proposing, and here you get into the details of the operations and the support description part. That is where we call the operation scenarios. So be aware that we should not be doing too much details of implementation at this point. So there is another document called OpCon, that is the operational concepts. So it's very similar to what in the description, but it's completely different. So the ConOps, there is the concepts of operation. It's really the high level that you have the use cases. And the OpCons, the document, there is operational concepts document, is the one that you're going to detail the implementations. So I have a few examples here of some of ConOps documents that are available online. The first one is the OOI, not the actual OOI ConOps document, but one ConOps document for CI science user. So here they are just being very specific into one kind of user. That is the user, the science user that is going to use the OI sub-infrastructure. So it's a great example, actually, because it's written completely in layman's term. And so it's as non-technical as possible. I went through this document, and it was very, very easy to understand what are they providing, what they are not providing. So all the diagrams that explain the flow of the operational scenario are great, simple, don't give it too much details of the implementation. So what they say that is it does not provide, and this document, for example, is the operating concept, as I mentioned before, some assumptions and constraints and some potential impacts. What it's fine, because it's not, geared towards funding agencies or developers, where it's really is targeting the user here. Another one, it's an old version of the OOI ConOps document that actually it's represented as a presentation, so it's slides. I'm aware they have a new document that is a very detailed and very good, well-developed document. But this one, it's a good reference to that is based on the IEEE standard and has a lot of the examples of data flow and the products. One thing that they had on this one is a discussion regarding the budget, how much money is allocated to different steps of the system, that typically we should not have that into a ConOps document. The third example is the LSST ConOps document that follows the DHS, the Department of Homeland State style for ConOps, that it's also based on the IEEE. It's a very detailed and long document, this one. It's about, I think, 80 pages. And they have a very detailed discussions on the operational scenarios and detailed operational concepts. So recall what I mentioned before, there are two different documents, the ConOps and the OpsCon. And actually they mix both documents into one here. So at the same time, you find the high-level description, but also you find detailed information about the implementations. What can be good or not depends on the stakeholders. Another example is the I think they call Nizar. It's from the NASA ISIRO project, the mission. This is a pretty long document, more than 300 pages. And what they decided to do here is not only have a single ConOps document and different documents for different parts of the system, but have mixed a lot of different concepts into a single document. So they describe the science and the applications, they have the requirements, then they come about the design and the ConOps, that is a subsection of this document. And so they get into the details of the flight system characteristics and so on, what they've been developed. So it's a very complete document, comprehensive document, available for the science users. But if you're looking just for the ConOps information, it's a little bit complicated to find it and extract, since all the concepts are mixed up. And the last example here is actually it's not an example, but it's more a guideline. It's the NASA Systems Engineering Handbook, where they have an annotated outline of our ConOps document. So this is a great resource, since I think for at least related to the CI projects that I've been involved on and saw some of their ConOps document, this is the most close to what people are doing on CI, and has a very interesting annotations and examples explain exactly what you should have and what you should not have in each section of your document. So I'd like to thank you again for joining this session, and I see you at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time for the panel.